All right. The time is 9 o'clock. Dan, are you ready?
I am.
Okay.
Thank you. Welcome everyone to the August 17th, 2022 Board of Directors regular meeting of TTSA. First item on our agenda is call to order, roll call, and pledge of allegiance. Rochelle, could you do roll call, please?
Yes. Director Tresson,
Here.
Director Lewis,
Here.
Director Cox,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
and President Wilkins.
Present.
Okay.
And would I'd be happy to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance unless maybe I could ask Director Lewis to do that. He's willing to. And I'd ask the other board members to and staff members to mute.
Oh, okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag, one nation, under God, indivisible, and for justice for all. The abbreviated version.
Yeah, just okay.
Thank you, Lane.
All right.
All right, next on our agenda would be the AB 361 action, which would allow us to conduct this meeting by Zoom. Would anyone like to make a motion allowing for that?
I will.
I'll second it.
A motion by Director Smeltzer to basically approve the AB 361 action, second by Director Lewis. Is there any discussion on this item?
I have no request for public comment.
Okay, so no public comment. Thank you. With that, Rochelle, if you could take the roll call.
Yes. Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
Director Cox,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
and President Wilkins.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is public comment. This is an opportunity for any member of the public to make comments to the Board of Directors on any item not on the agenda for up to a maximum of 5 minutes. Is there any public comment, Rochelle?
I have no public comment.
Okay, thank you. With that, I will close public comment and we will move down to the consent agenda. So we have 2 items on the consent agenda. One is approval of payment of general fund warrants, and the second is approval of the financial statements. Is there any questions or comments from board members on the consent agenda or any desire to remove any of these items?
Did the finance committee review these items, Dan?
My understanding is the finance committee did not meet this month.
No,
Okay.
but we've I've gone over them. I just got Blake. Had you gone over them also?
Yes, I have. And
Do you have any comments
nothing,
on items?
Nothing that I saw that I'm prepared to move forward with the consent.
Yeah. So
Great.
same here. I'll make the motion. We move forward and approve the warrants.
Great. We got a motion by Director Lewis to approve the consent calendar. I will check for public comment in a moment. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Tresson. Rochelle, is there any public comment or any member of the public who would request an item be removed from the consent calendar?
There is no member of the public wishing to provide comment at this time.
Okay, thank you. So we've got a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Rochelle, if you could take roll call.
Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
Director Cox,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
and President Wilkins.
Yes.
Okay. Motion
All
approved.
right, thank you. Next on our agenda is item 5.1, which is a report out from the July 2022 closed session meeting. Dick, could you handle the report out for us, please?
Yes, there was nothing to report out from that closed session, no reportable action.
Thank you. And do we need to take public comment on that?
Yes, this is on the agenda. You should.
Okay. Is there any public comment on this item?
There's no public comment.
Okay, thank you. And it requires no action. So we will move to the next item on our agenda, which is approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting on July 2022. Is there any member of the board that has any questions or comments on the minutes? Seeing none. Rochelle, is there any public comment on the minutes?
No public comment.
Okay, seeing none, would any member of the board care to make a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes
I'll
of July 20th.
Motion by Director Lewis, second by Director Smeltzer. Thank you. If there's no further discussion, Rochelle, if you could take roll call, please.
Sure. Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
Director Cox,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
and President Wilkins.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Excellent. Next on our agenda is discussion of employee health benefit considerations. And I believe Vicky is going to lead this conversation.
Correct.
Yes, good morning, President Wilkins and directors. TTSA has a couple of recent resolutions on file related to employee health benefits. Annually, CalPERS adjusts their health rates as it relates to their health plans, and this year we're seeing a significant rate increase as we have in previous years. At the request of the Board of Directors, I am bringing forth some possibilities for consideration for possible changes to employee benefits. So first up, it's important to consider who is covered by our health insurance here at TTSA. We have 50 existing employees. Of those 50 employees, 20 choose the California option for employee benefit or for health benefits, and 30 are out-of-state employees. We also have 55 retirees, 28 of which live in California. 19 of those 28 are Medicare eligible. We also have 27 out-of-state retirees, 20 of which are Medicare eligible. And we have 2 board members, and of course the 2 board members are subject to the California rates. Next slide, please. So for 2023, we have a couple of plans available, 3 plans available. We have PERS Platinum Region 1, which is for the employees that have a home base in California, and we're seeing a 13.54% increase on that plan. We have PERS Platinum out of state, and that's for the employees that live, generally speaking, in Nevada, but out of state, and we're seeing an 18.42% increase on that plan. And we have PERS Gold, which is seeing a 17.74% increase. And it's important to note on PERS Gold that it is available to, only available to those that can utilize a zip code within California. That'll be important in the near future. We'll talk about that more. So when we're looking at the new health plan rates for 2023, the bottom half of this slide is showing what a annual rate for a single employee would be for each plan. And we're seeing tier levels here. So we're seeing the plan name, which is Platinum Region 1, Platinum out of state, and Gold, but we're also seeing single, 2-party, and family. Single meaning employee only, 2-party meaning employee plus an additional person on their plan, and family meaning an employee plus 2 or more people on their plan. Next slide, please. So it's important to compare the 2 plans, PERS Platinum and PERS Gold. It's also important to note that PERS Platinum Region 1 and PERS Platinum Out of State are the exact same plan. They just have different rates based on where the employee or retiree lives. So basically, we have two plans available to us. We have PERS Platinum and PERS Gold. The biggest differences in the plans are the deductible, the coinsurance, and the out-of-pocket limits. So we see for PERS Platinum, we have for the deductible amount, $500 for the individual and $1,000 for the family. Additionally, we see on PERS Gold, a $1,000 deductible for the individual and $2,000 for the family. We also see an asterisk on the PERS Gold plan, which notates that certain incentives can be performed by the employee and by their spouse in order to reduce their deductible amount by up to $500 per two individuals per the plan. And those items are things like doing an annual biometric screening, smoking cessation if somebody smokes, getting a second opinion, getting a flu shot, things like that that allow the employee to reduce their deductible. And if they happen to not fall into any of those categories, for example, if the employee is not a smoker to begin with, they will automatically receive the reduction in their deductible just by being a non-smoker to begin with. When we're talking about an out-of-pocket limit, we see on PERS Platinum that we have $2,000 for the individual and $4,000 for the family. But on PERS Gold, we're seeing $3,000 and $6,000. Again, these are significant differences in the plans. But I wanted to briefly explain what a coinsurance means and what an out-of-pocket limit means. So a coinsurance is a cost-sharing percentage that is paid by the policyholder for a covered healthcare services. So for example, we see either a 10% coinsurance or 20% coinsurance, depending on the plan. And those percentages are paid after the deductible has been met. And a cost sharing stops when the medical expenses reach an out-of-pocket limit. So for example, an employee on the PERS Platinum plan would pay, if they received some kind of service that required them to pay for a deductible, they would pay their $500 deductible, but they would still be subject to a coinsurance on certain services up to, and 10% of the coinsurance, but up to a $2,000 maximum for an individual. That's on the PERS Platinum plan. And I just wanted to take a minute to explain those just in case there were individuals that didn't understand that. And if there are any questions on that, I'm happy to answer it. But next slide, please, Rochelle. So the current health coverage that's provided to active employees, retirees, and board of directors is basically laid out here. So currently TTSA pays for the PERS Platinum plan for employee plus their eligible dependents. For any employee that chooses to go into the Gold plan instead of the Platinum plan, they receive 50% of the cost share that the agency realizes. They receive that 50% savings into their HRA plan. And employees also receive a deductible amount equivalent to the chosen healthcare plan. And that's also provided to the employee at the beginning of the calendar year into their HRA account. So depending on whether an employee chooses Platinum or Gold plan, depending on whether they're employee only or employee plus one or more, they receive their deductible based on that plan and their tier level. For retirees, the agency currently pays 100%, well, I'm sorry, let me take that back. The agency pays the premium based upon a 1987 resolution that the agency has on file with CalPERS. Generally speaking, that covers 100% of the premium for the employee plus their dependents, eligible dependents. But in some cases, the retiree may be paying a small amount of their premium, depending on the plan, depending on where they live, and depending on how many people they have on their plan. And for the board of directors, the agency covers 100% of the premium for the PERS Platinum plan. Next slide, please. Thanks, Rochelle. So on this slide, we're seeing what our current premiums are or could be based on the plans that we may or may not provide to the employees. So currently, we see in the top row current enrollment for employees in current enrollment. And when I say current enrollment, I want to point out that this is using 2023 premium rates, but it's based on 2022 enrollment. So I did the best I could in estimating what those rates would be. But for current enrollment, using those 2023 rates, for the employees, the cost would be 1.3 million. For retirees, 758,000, and for the board, 57,000. That's an annual amount for all the people on those plans. If everyone were to go into the Platinum plan, we can see that there would be a slight increase for employees, but retirees and board would remain around the same because they're already being offered and taking the Platinum plan. We also have the Gold with the split. So the split meaning that cost sharing that we talked about just a minute ago. So currently that's what employees are offered at TTSA should they choose to not go into the Platinum plan. And just a pause for a little minute. At the bottom of this slide, it shows the current enrollment that we have here at TTSA. So we do have 19 employees that are currently enrolled in PERS Platinum and 31 employees that are currently enrolled in PERS Gold and receiving the split, the 50% cost sharing split. So again, as we go along, we see that Platinum would increase the rates a little bit. Gold with the split would save a little bit of money if we had everyone enrolled in Gold, but still receiving the cost share. And then if all employees were enrolled in Gold, but not receiving a cost share, we see a pretty significant savings. This is the deductible. So currently, as we already discussed, the agency provides the deductible amount according to the chosen health plan into the employee's HRA account that is deposited annually at the beginning of the calendar year. So current enrollment, we are paying $73,500 for that deductible amount to be applied into the employees' HRAs. And that's of course based on the 19 employees that are in Platinum and the 31 employees that are in Gold. If all employees were enrolled in Platinum and we still offered this benefit, it would cost the agency $45,000. And if all employees were enrolled in Gold and we offered this benefit, it would cost the agency $91,000. And the next slide, thank you, Rochelle. This is something to consider. This is not something the agency does right now, but since there is a pretty significant difference between the coinsurance or the out-of-pocket maximum based on Platinum versus Gold, the agency could opt to provide a coinsurance reimbursement to employees. And it's important to note that that would be a reimbursement. So it would not be a lump sum amount put into the employee's HRA account at the beginning of the calendar year. Rather, it would be based on actual costs to the employee that they would have to submit to the HRA provider as a reimbursement. So currently, of course, we don't offer that plan. So there's no data to report for current enrollment, and it would not be something we would offer with Platinum. It would only be offered with Gold in order to basically make the plans match, meaning make the Gold plan similar to the Platinum so the employee's not out of pocket additional funds. And because it's a reimbursement, it's hard to, and we don't have data, it's hard to say what the cost would be, but the cost could be up to $100,000. And that was if every employee and all of their dependents took advantage of that reimbursement. So this slide summarizes the data that I have just provided. So it provides current enrollment data for employee, retiree, and board. It shows the deductible amount and the possible coinsurance amount, as well as a retiree reimbursement that might need to be done. I didn't talk about that yet, but a retiree reimbursement may need to be done if we decided to move to the Gold Plan for all employees and retirees. Gold Plan is only available for those that can provide a zip code within California. So that would exclude all retirees that live outside of California. So when we looked at the data of the current retirees that are not Medicare eligible, there were, I believe, I forget exactly, I think it was seven individuals that would apply to. We might choose to, I guess I would call it, make them whole by allowing them to enroll in PERS Platinum out of state, but also giving them the difference between the Gold Plan and the out-of-state plan. And that would equate to a $32,000 cost to the agency if we chose to do that. So this slide is probably most important for you as the board members to be able to compare some costs. And then moving on to the next slide, as I created this document, I realized that there were some challenges. The challenges could be seen in many ways, I guess, but basically we have open enrollment coming up, which is September 19th through October 14th. And that is a CalPERS established open enrollment date range. TTSA can choose to have open enrollment during any dates they wish. We just have to, we, the employer, have to have any changes into CalPERS by a certain date. So that's the only date that I would have to adhere by internally. But if any changes that the board may decide to make right now will need to be implemented, and there's a short period of time to do that. The changes to the active employee open enrollment process, which I would likely normally be working on right about now, it's going to shorten that time period, but also TTSA has a third-party company that performs our open enrollment for us. So any changes that we make on our benefits, I would have to report to that company and they would have to build it into their plan. There may be changes to the HRA for active employees, and that would also need to be built into that plan by that third-party company. CalPERS contracts would need to be changed. Currently, TTSA contracts to pay for, essentially to pay for the PERS Platinum plan. So any contracts, this is important to note, they become effective the first of the second month following receipt. So for changes that we would want effective January 1st, any resolution would have to be to CalPERS no later than November 30th in order for it to be effective January 1st. We would need to decide how we would handle those reimbursements, if any, for the out-of-state retirees. That would put additional work on our accounting staff or admin staff. So it's something that would need to be worked out, but certainly not something that couldn't be overcome. We would need to notify the retirees of these possible changes. And again, CalPERS open enrollment begins September 19th. So a retiree could opt into their plan for next year as early as September 19th. Our next board meeting, I believe, is September 21st. So the dates overlap a little bit. So we would definitely want to notify our retirees of any possible changes. And let's see, the CalPERS contract for retiree changes would not be effective prior, which I just said, prior to the open enrollment. We would have a couple of day overlap. So these are all things to consider. And then for you, the board, consideration for your next step. Agency cost savings you can realize agency cost savings by paying for PERS Gold instead of PERS Platinum. There needs to be a decision made whether we continue the deductible amount for the employees. Also, whether we continue the cost sharing split with employees. We would need to decide whether we're going to do that reimbursement through the HRA for any coinsurance, and that would need to be set up with a HRA provider. And then we also need to determine, the board, how they would handle the retirees, whether they would pay for gold, whether we want to choose a different plan than gold, whether there's going to be a cost difference provided to those people that are out of state, to those retirees out of state. So any questions?
Well, it
It's a
seems like,
lot.
Lane?
yeah, it seems like, I mean, if we go to the gold and, you know, from the platinum and you have the reimbursement savings, I mean, really, I mean, it's going to save, TTSA some money, but it's also, and with really no impact to the employee. I mean, I look at it, anything, you can never take away a benefit that an employee has. And by doing this and having that reimbursement, I think they're remaining whole in their insurance policy that they have. Is that not correct?
Should the agency choose to have all employees move into the gold plan, and if we were to continue the deductible, providing the deductible to employees, and if we did the coinsurance reimbursement, then the plans would remain the same, essentially.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
If I may, Director Lewis, I do want to point out that the one change that would affect employees is the loss of the cost share. So while the employees would remain whole on coverage, they are currently receiving that cost share benefit.
Yeah, I wanted to chat about that because I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, I think all employees were in the platinum program. I think it was identified that the gold program was less expensive and was still a very good health coverage for the employees. And so I think at that time, what we did, it was a fairly kind of quick and dirty thing, was to create an incentive for employees to shift to the gold program, which is how that whole cost share came about. So anyway, that was, I think, my recollection of the recent history on that. Vicki, do you recall when that occurred? Was that 3 years ago?
This is 2022 is the second year that we've done this. So we started it in 2021.
Okay. Okay. And so what that did, I think for a number of employees, was they looked at it and made a value judgment from their particular circumstance that going to the gold plan and then effectively sharing in 50% of the cost savings between the gold plan and the platinum plan with the district, with the agency, that was, in their opinion, kind of the best for their financial situation, financial and healthcare situation. So, you know, part of what we're talking about is if we go to the gold plan, but then, if we were to just move all employees to the gold plan, but then have TTSA effectively kick in money on the backside to make it effectively the same as the platinum plan, that would be less expensive to the agency. And we would be removing all employees to the gold plan. Now, the thing I could use a little more clarification on is with the retirees, because there was a note on one of the slides that talked about the gold plan not being available to retirees. Could you explain how that all works a little more for me, Vicky?
Yes, so the gold plan is only available to employees as well as retirees that, I'm going to say, live within California or have a California zip code to report. CalPERS allows active employees to utilize the agency's zip code in order to qualify for the PERS Gold plan. So if we have an employee that lives in Reno, for example, they can utilize TTSA's zip code in order to qualify to enroll in the PERS Gold plan. However, when you're not an active employee and you live out of state, you do not qualify to receive or to be able to enroll into the gold plan. You have to have a California address to report or a California zip code. So therefore, out-of-state retirees are not eligible to enroll in the PERS Gold plan. So if we did say that we're going to have all employees and retirees and board members eligible for the gold plan only, we would have retirees that would suddenly or unexpectedly be out of pocket. The difference between the PERS Platinum out-of-state plan, which is the only plan available, basically available to them in this general area, they would have to pay the difference between that PERS Platinum out-of-state plan and the PERS Gold plan, which is what the agency is willing to pay for. And again, it's based on tier level and that kind of stuff. But I did a quick estimate this morning, and it equated to about $32,000 annually if we were to reimburse those retirees so that they could enroll in PERS Platinum, but the agency is only paying for PERS Gold.
Okay,
Did I explain that okay? Or, I mean,
I think
A
so.
little better.
If I understand correctly, retirees can't go to the gold plan. They have to stay on the platinum plan if they live out of state. And then if, as a board, we were to decide to move to the gold plan unilaterally, kind of for all employees, we would have a secondary decision on, for the out-of-state employees, whether we want to basically fund the difference between gold and platinum or leave that to the retiree to fund.
yes,
And just to clarify that, that would be not out-of-state employees, is out-of-state retirees that are non-Medicare eligible. Because once you're on the Medicare supplement, which CalPERS requires once you reach that age to enroll in Medicare, the cost of the supplement is they can remain on platinum with no, that Medicare platinum supplement would be no out-of-pocket cost to them. That's less than the gold plan cost.
Okay,
So currently, I think Vicky indicated there were 7 retirees who live out of state yet are not Medicare eligible. Them and their spouse are not of the Medicare age. And so there'd be, I think you said $30,000 of potential reimbursement if we, the intent of the board again is, to honor the employees and retirees who meet the criteria, have no additional out-of-pocket costs for their premiums. That would be an extra $30,000 to those non-Medicare eligible out-of-state retirees. Vicky, a lot of stuff, a lot of balls in the air, between the different plans, the different employee classes, premiums, HRAs. It is a lot for us all to try and digest. And I thought you did a really nice job with your presentation, but it is, an awful lot. I know 2+ years ago when we approved the concept, or not the concept, we approved cost sharing. The idea was that, there was a opportunity for the agency and the employee to benefit. I think the tables that you showed indicated that, the cost sharing reduced our costs as opposed to everybody going to platinum down to the cost sharing solution, you know, is about $50,000 reduced premium. I shouldn't say premium costs. Premiums plus cost share costs to the agency was $50,000 less than if everybody was on platinum. But that $50,000 in savings, there was an additional cost, and that we're funding the contributing towards deductibles for those that went to the gold at a higher level than those that stayed at the platinum. And again, I think that was another $30,000. I think it was from 45 to 71 in the table. So $26,000 extra. So that, you know, the savings to the agency are pretty small net with the cost sharing kind of setup we have now.
And I think initially, yes, the first year we did it, much more significant, but the second year not as significant, correct?
So, you know, I think going back to your sort of timeline, if we want to take any kind of action to change who the agency contracts with, or what plan we contract with, we're going to contract with Gold. We really need to make that decision next month so that there's time for employees and those retirees that are impacted by this to change their plan through the open enrollment period. So that's the timeline we're on.
Yes, and I think it's also important to note, and I didn't say that, and I apologize, but if an employee, if the agency chose to fund the PERS Gold plan, an employee could still enroll in PERS Platinum. They would just pay the difference between Gold and Platinum.
Yeah,
Just wanted to note that.
the open enrollment is voluntary.
Correct,
Right.
yeah. And certainly, yes, people would need some time to make those decisions to weigh out the options and decide how to move forward.
So I had a question about when this plan goes into effect, if we do it. The current retirees out of state would cost the agency about $32,000, and they would slowly go away as they qualified for Medicare. But new retirees, would they fall into that same category and need to be on platinum?
Yes, potentially. I mean, it would depend on their age and whether they were Medicare eligible, but I would say, generally speaking, that is likely to happen, at least initially, yes.
Yeah, so 32,000 would pretty much stay the same over time.
Yeah, you might have a few fall off and a few add on. That is, I would say that's a fair statement.
And David, that's an interesting observation. I mean, as the employees become majority PEPRA employees and the retirement age to receive your full benefits increases from the classic age of 55 to the PEPRA age of 62, with actually even additional incremental benefits as you go from 62 to 67, there's a likelihood that retirees looking to pick up the retiree health benefits will be even closer to or eligible at retirement to Medicare. So, you know, currently the employees that are retiring are most likely of the classic PERS. And so we've had a fair number of them retire probably at 55, plus or minus a few years. And so they've got, you know, potentially a decade before they become Medicare eligible. But as we go forward and the agency and more of the employees are PEPRA, they're likely to work closer to that Medicare eligible age. And so that cost to the agency for that reimbursement of additional costs may even go down. And it's a longer term scenario, but just something to be aware of.
Okay.
Okay,
Rochelle, do you mind bringing back up the PowerPoint slide? And I think it's like the third to last one that sort of summarizes a number of different scenarios and sort of plays out the costs for all the different, not only the premium costs, but the HRA costs and everything. I'd like to just take a look at that again.
Yeah, it's slide number 9, Michelle.
Sorry, I have other PowerPoints up, so I'm sort of between them.
No problem. Vicky, while we're waiting, I mean, obviously this is going to impact, if the board decides to, and at this board meeting, you're looking for direction of what, if anything, you need to bring back to the board, in the future. And, the board packet didn't really include this PowerPoint presentation or much information. And so I'm curious, and certainly probably the retirees are in the dark. This isn't something that, it's something that I would love to make sure that, staff and retirees have had a chance to be sort of informed about it before the board makes that final decision in September. I don't know what kind of outreach has happened, as we're, preparing for this board meeting, whether staff, other than just seeing the agenda item, a discussion of employee health benefits consideration, and possibly if they look back at the video from last board meeting, how up to speed are our staff?
I don't know. I mean, I guess I would answer that by saying I have heard a lot of comments from staff related to this subject. A lot of the comments have been related to the cost share received for those employees that enroll in Gold Plan. There's also been a lot of comments related to the full compensation as it relates to employee salaries. Those are the two biggest comments that I have heard from a lot of staff. But to fully answer your question, to state whether they know all the particulars that we're talking about today, these have not been discussed with staff. I would say generally speaking, they understand that the agency is looking at whether we'll pay for gold rather than platinum, but all the other details are not completely clear to everyone at this point.
And Vicky, I'm sorry, I must have spaced out for a second. You said the comments that you've heard, one related to, the impact and loss of cost share.
Correct.
And the second one you said had something to do with the salary.
Yes, because we did a class and comp study a couple of years ago, and that class and comp study was based on all of our benefits. There's a lot of discussion about how changing this benefit might affect those salaries. I'm going to close my window real quick. Hang on a second. There was a truck driving by that was a little loud. So those are really the two comments that I have heard most, and I've heard them a lot, to where I would say that those are the two biggest concerns for employees.
Okay, thanks for sharing that. It's certainly good to hear some feedback from them. Trying to decide what to discuss next. The cost share is kind of interesting in that while the district, between the platinum and the current enrollment, again, we see, on this chart for the employees, it's about a $45,000, looks like, reduction in our premium costs. If you go down to the deductible, that was offset by, an additional almost $30,000. So the cost shared, really didn't, for the district, it was not much of a cost savings overall. go down to the gold line, I guess, my recommendation would be I would like to see staff come back with the materials necessary for us to make a move to the gold plan along the bottom line here, where we would continue to contribute the full deductible, and that would be for the gold plan, the $1,000 per individual, $2,000 per family, despite the fact that it's very easy for actual deductibles to be $500 or $1,000. So providing that though, just in case someone doesn't take care of those preventative measures, and it provides some additional costs that could help offset the loss in cost sharing benefits. So there no deductible, no premium cost to the employees, paying their full deductible, probably double their deductible that they can use on other healthcare costs. For us to institute an HRA for reimbursement of the additional coinsurance for the difference between what the platinum plan and the gold plan is, so that we're providing, there's no additional costs above what the platinum plan would cost. And I know you have up to 100,000 there. I think it's probably going to be considerably less than that. And that we honor the retirees, our commitment that there'd be no cost to them, and that just for the fact that they live out of state and don't have access to gold, that we would pay that. And I believe that the total cost for that is probably going to be much closer to 1.9 million than the 2 million. So that would result in, close to, I'm guessing, $300,000 in potential district savings, still provide the employees with, I believe, platinum level benefits, no out-of-pocket costs, additional costs that they can use for other health needs. And, this is, we met last month and had our kickoff meeting for the rate study. We are definitely looking at going out to all of our customers for them to pony up money to increase user fees. And I think it's important that we, as a district, be prudent with our expenditures also. And I think this is a way we can do it that really is still provides the employees with tremendous benefits, no out-of-pocket required costs, going above and beyond, I think, in many ways with that deductible contribution, and is responsible to our ratepayers as we ask them to look at fairly substantial rate increase over the next 5 years and possibly beyond. We're obviously not at the point where we've determined what that rate increase is, but I think this would be a responsible thing. So that, but I think as if the rest of the board are, we make a successful motion to direct staff to proceed with this goal plan, I think it's prudent, we would want you hand in hand to really educate staff about the elements, because it is confusing. It's easy to be alarmed, and hopefully, share this and then provide when we come back in September, assuming we go this way, that there's an opportunity for staff to share their concerns in case there's something that we really haven't taken into consideration before we actually take potentially formal action at that time.
Thanks, Blake.
One more comment from Dave here. If I heard that right, we needed to make a decision before the 21st meeting in September. Didn't we have to notify the retirees by September 19th?
That's when the open enrollment starts.
But didn't we have to notify the retirees on that date? That's a question for Vicki.
Thank you. I guess I would say I would absolutely want to reach out to the retirees. And I would want to reach out to them as soon as possible to tell them that this was an option that was on the table. And that if we did make those changes, we would communicate them to them as soon as we possibly could. But it would not be before the next board date, for example, unless there was a special meeting.
And there's no problem with it, doing it that way?
Well, I mean, I guess I would answer that by saying it's not the most ideal, but it can certainly be done. Again, it would just be a matter of communicating to them that these changes may occur. And if they did occur, you know, letting them know what we think the outcome would be if they did occur.
Okay. One more question. If we do this and go to the gold plan for everyone, and it turns out that it wasn't a good idea or whatever, it looks okay to me. But I mean, if we had a lot of feedback and problems with it, is there a problem going back to the current method?
We can make changes annually to our plans through CalPERS or what we contribute as the employer. So we would just need to communicate that to CalPERS, similar to what we're talking about right now. We'd have to put a new contract on file each time with CalPERS. So each time we would make a change like that, just put a new contract on file with them.
Okay. Thank you.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
I'm with Blake on this as far as, you know, with the substantial increase coming forward and being proven financial managers of the TTSA's funds, I think it's, you know, especially when you go to the public, these are all things that we were looking at and made the reductions to be more efficient in TTSA's monies coming in. And I think we need to look at that and before you go out to the public when you're going to have a substantial rate increase. I mean, we were looking at these costs as being pretty high increases coming forward.
Thanks, Wayne. So Vicki, I want to just make sure I've got a couple of points that are clear to me. So when we did the cost of, excuse me, not the cost of service study, when we did the class and comp study,
Mhm.
I think that was 3 years ago. What that built in, because that looked at overall compensation, total compensation. Part of that total compensation was the PERS Platinum plan at that time. So I think if I understand correctly, some of the questions or comments that have come up from employees have been, okay, there was this total compensation analysis that was done. It was based on the Platinum plan. And if we now go to a different plan that's less expensive, that costs the employees more, then potentially that creates some imbalance at that time. Now, if we go to the gold plan, but the agency effectively on the back end through HRA and or retiree contributions makes it effectively equal to the benefit that is gained by the Platinum plan, you know, from my perspective, that ends up being a push. You know, so anyway, that's just a comment. I think, Blake, what you were suggesting was exactly that, if I'm not mistaken, was to move to the gold plan, but figure out, you know, the different levers that the agency needs to pull with, you know, deductible reimbursement and, you know, co-insurance to effectively make it the same to the employee as what the Platinum plan would have been. Is that effectively what your goal is?
Yes.
Okay. So I think if we're able to achieve that, I think that as it relates to the class and comp study, I think I could look an employee in the eye and say that we've maintained, I guess, parity there or equality. If effectively at the end of the day, you're getting the equivalent of what the platinum benefit was, but through kind of different mechanisms, then I don't think we've thrown the class and comp study out of balance. What I do think, and I hear, what Vicky's saying is that there's a lot of administrative work on the downstream side of this to make it all happen. There's, and that we shouldn't that we should recognize that there's an expense associated with that, of kind of accounting for all this and making it all work. So, if at the end of the day, we're saving $50,000, but accumulating $50,000 worth of administrative effort to make it all happen, maybe it's not worth it. If we're saving $300,000, keeping all the employees effectively equal to the platinum plan. And I understand Richard's comment that where we may be right now is employees from a total compensation standpoint may be slightly better off than was the case when we did the class and comp study, because with the 50% cost reimbursement between the difference in the platinum and the gold, potentially that was not a financial windfall, but a financial benefit that was kind of above and beyond what was assumed in the class and comp study. So that there may be some loss in value there from what employees have had for the last year or two by going from platinum to gold. But again, that was, I know the board's goal at that time was, again, to kind of create this no harm, no foul incentive for employees to move to the gold plan so that there could be sharing in the cost savings associated with the gold plan. It almost looks like the way that's panned out is that there were some relatively nominal savings to the agency through that process, and maybe a higher degree of value that went to the employees by being able to recoup that 50% cost share. And I think that's just the way the numbers worked out, but was probably not what was necessarily envisioned at the time that we created that incentive. So anyway, I'm talking a lot here, but I think if it's possible for us to effectively provide the same value to employees as the platinum plan, if it's possible for us to contract for the gold plan, do some downstream contributions that to the employee effectively make it look financially like the platinum plan, as well as to the retirees, then I'm in favor of that. What I would request is that when this comes back to the board for consideration in September, I know Vicky touched on it, said, hey, there's a lot of administrative effort here. I'd like to hear about that again, just in terms of how much, is this like like a half of an FTE to deal with this, or what exactly does the administrative effort consist of? Because I think what you were pointing out, Vicky, was there's some timing logistics right now, right, between now and the end of the year to make these changes happen in relatively short order. But then there's going to also be longer term, just kind of keeping track of all this, because you have to do it on an employee by employee and retiree by retiree basis. It's not just a single kind of across the board adjustment. It's very personal to every single person.
I would say that from my perspective, what I meant by that is that we have a short period of time to make all these changes and implement all these changes. And basically that's because open enrollment is a month from now, begins a month from now with CalPERS and with TTSA. Again, we can choose what dates we have for our open enrollment. And we'd also have to have our third-party administrator for the open enrollment make those changes and implement them into their, I don't know, computer program. I think those are my concerns. Being able to get on January 1st to have everything, all the T's crossed and all the I's dotted, that's my biggest concern. But whatever the board's desire is, we will make that happen. So I understand that when we're looking at these numbers, we can save a significant amount of money by going into the gold plan, and that we can essentially do certain things to make the plan similar to platinum to provide the same level of benefits to the employee. And this is me personally, my biggest concern is just making it all happen within the really small time frame that we have available to us.
If we did a special board meeting, does that help?
It could, but it could in the sense of we would know before open enrollment actually began what we were going to do, so we could start implementing some of those changes. So my answer would be yes, but we do still need to communicate this to retirees, and the small amount of time that we have between now and the next board meeting to communicate that to the retirees would be cut down by a special meeting. So I think it may be advantageous, but I don't know how significantly it would help.
Okay. So I think what I'd say on that is that, at least from my perspective, if staff believes that a special meeting would be helpful, feel free to try to put that on the calendar. If you think just waiting for the regular board meeting would be
Okay.
The best, then we can do that.
Okay.
And I was thinking, potentially that week following Labor Day, it would be a couple weeks ahead of our next board meeting. And if that helps the cause, then great. The other thing I would say is I'm very interested in hearing opinions from the employees in terms of whether they feel like what we're doing here is taking something away. I heard Richard's comment that because for the last 2 years, we've had this kind of cost share split option out there, that that's provided some value to some employees, and then if that goes away, they may look at that as a takeaway. Of course, it was something that was given a couple of years ago, and it's maybe it's a little different in my mind, in that it's not something that's been in place for an extremely long period of time. It was put in place as an incentive to encourage employees to go to gold. I think, quite frankly, if as a board we had realized it was an option to just move everyone to gold and then do some downstream contributions to make it the equivalent to platinum, that's probably what we would have done 2 years ago. I think realistically, for whatever reason, we didn't identify that as a possibility at that time, so we went the course that we did instead.
Yeah, and I think that, again, the premiums were so significantly different in that first year when we did it between gold and platinum that it was certainly more lucrative, or a better cost savings for the agency at that time, where it's more almost a wash now.
Mm-hmm. Dale, any comments?
You know, I'm sitting back listening to all this. And I'm wondering whether or not it would behoove us to keep our plans in place as we have it. Unless there is significant pushback from the employees that they're not getting as good a deal as what they had hoped as far as for their health plan. You know, we got a time crunch here. It looks to me and it appears to me that Vicky would be pushed to the limits to modify and to put this revision into place. I just wonder if it wouldn't behoove us to keep the status quo as we're moving forward, and if this is going to be a significant savings, that we address it the next calendar year.
Got it.
I just, you know, there's just a lot of numbers here that are overwhelming, a lot of different issues that's at play here. And I'm just looking at the impact that it's going to have with staff, with what we got going on right now within the agency, and whether or not we'd be better served leaving the current insurance plan in place and addressing it next calendar year.
Okay.
Based on that,
Dave?
what Dale just said, what did Richard and Vicky say about that? I'd like to hear from them.
Want me to go first, Vicky? That's certainly something that we could entertain. And I had a few points that I was going to bring up for final consideration, so I'll jump in now since I have the opportunity. But as Director Cox mentioned, I think we should look at the current transition the agency's in. We have a new board of director coming on. We have a new GM that will be coming on soon. So I think it is something to consider where the staff is at with all of these transitions. I think through the process, Vicky and I discovered a lot of other areas that we could consider for cost savings that are worthy of vetting out and bringing back at some point. And I think those would tie in well. We were discussing the class and comp and the fact that we're kind of closing in on the end of the validity of the original one done, and there are some questions about how this would affect that. It would give us that ability to do a new class and comp, factor in going to gold. I think it's a substantial savings that we can't deny and should go in that direction. And I'm never a proponent of kicking the can down the road, but in this case, it may be something to consider that we push it off for 1 year. I don't think that would stop the board from giving us direction at the next board meeting to implement it in that calendar year, so we could make the decision to move forward and know that that's what's coming. And then it gives the employees, the question was asked, how much kind of outreach do we do? I know I did a bit of outreach talking with people, and as Vicky mentioned, I got the same feedback as I was working to explain that in the end of the day, coverage wise, you'll be whole. But there was a lot of concern with the cost share because people are using those funds to cover health costs, because it does go on their HRA. It's not cash in pocket. So they are using those to cover qualifying health events or coverage. So I definitely think it's something that the board should consider, maybe take action, put it in place for the following fiscal year. It gives us time to come back to the board with some other cost savings ideas that we have identified. Again, there's a lot of data to collect. I think there's a lot of usage of benefit data that we could collect that we weren't able to do in the short time frame. And talking with Vicky, I think the level of effort, I don't want to minimize the level of effort it's going to take to meet the deadlines. There is definitely a concern with meeting those at this point in time. So with my comments, I'll turn it over to Vicky.
I would mirror a lot of Richard's comments. First and foremost, I would say and acknowledge that there is absolutely a pretty big cost savings to be had by moving from platinum to gold. And I would say, generally speaking, if the employee and retirees feel as though they are receiving a similar benefit, I think that would be helpful. I think, so I at least want to acknowledge that there's a big cost savings that could be had right now. I suppose I would say, and this is probably more personal from my own self, in that, yes, it is going to be a lot of work in a very short period of time. I am concerned about that, but it can happen, and if that is the board's desire, it will happen. I would also say that, yes, in going through this exercise, Richard and I did determine that there are a lot of potential ways that this agency could have realized a lot of cost savings. But we would need to delve into those a little bit deeper to know for sure what kind of cost savings, and we would like to communicate those potential cost savings to employees in the spirit of transparency and get their comments and thoughts on those potential savings. I would agree that we're probably at the end of our useful life of the current class and comp study, and that I think a new one would be advantageous to the agency. I think there are a lot of ways, again, just a lot of ways, even during that class and comp study, that we could identify ways to save some money and report that as total comp. Again, and I guess just to summarize all of that and to wrap it all up, if it is the board's desire to move to gold, and I do understand that we can save a lot of money, we will make it happen. It will be tight, but we'll make it happen.
All right, thanks, Vicki. All right, so I think, what I heard from the board is the idea of moving towards gold is a good one. I think there was general consensus there. And then we've had some recent conversation about, is that something we should try to do right now or create a little more breathing room in that transition and migrate in that direction next year, assuming the numbers hold. The other thing that I've learned with healthcare over the years is these plans and the nuances of them and the different costs of them tend to swing pretty violently. I was going to say wildly, but it's almost violent sometimes, the way the numbers change. So, there's a possibility we could put a lot of effort into making this change this year, and then next year, the cost of the platinum program comes down and the cost of the gold program goes up, and the cost savings end up being less, or it could go in the other direction. We don't really know. We just know that it changes a lot. So I guess thoughts from other board members. We've heard from Dale of, I think what I heard from you, Dale, was support for the idea, but let's wait and do it next year. I think I heard from Richard that just internally, maybe there's some value to that in terms of one less item of change within for the employees to get their heads around right now. I think we've heard from Vicki that if the board decides to make the change now, that she'll make it happen, but she's going to be probably, her and Crystal are going to be putting a lot of effort in over the next couple of months to make that occur. So I guess I'm curious what the other board members think on the timing issue. And if no one jump
You
in,
know, I think it's a critical that they take a look with the goal plan to show the public we're looking at all cost savings involved. And Vicki could make it happen if she says she can make it happen. Get the feedback from the employees, and then we can make a decision at the following board meeting.
so you're suggesting that we agendize at our September meeting this as a possible action and kind of keep moving down the path, and then at the September board meeting, we could do one of two things. One would be one of three things. One would be make no change. Two would be to make no change this year, but provide direction to make the change next year. Or three would be to make the change this year. And then we look at each of those three options at our September meeting. Okay. Thanks, Lane. Blake?
Yeah, I'd like to keep moving. I think that, even if we choose those options of, not taking action this year, the efforts that Vicki will take, and I recognize, Vicki, that it is going to be a lot of work. It'll pay off in making it, hopefully easier to get there when we do it next year. And so I would like to see us continue to move down this path, and but the board to be open to, one, if for some reason administratively we can't get there, or two, we hear enough feedback with valid concerns that cause us to pause, we have the option to pause. But I still believe it's, this is a good plan, and if we can do it, the agency actually benefits, and we're better set for the future as well. Again, we're talking about health insurance, not just this year, but a benefit we want to provide employees, for all the years they're employed, and this great retiree benefit as well. And so I'm really trying to take the long range picture. So I'd like to see staff continue to move and provide us with the opportunity to take action in September.
Okay. Dave, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm open to the having all those three options in September, because substantial amount of money to be saved. If we can do it, we should do it. But if it's as disruptive as it could perhaps be, then it's not a good idea, and maybe a little bit of time until next year is probably a good idea. So I'm willing to put it off till the next meeting and look at it hard then.
Okay. Richard and Vicki, do you feel like you have adequate direction from the board at this point?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Complicated topic, and I appreciate everyone's attention to the detail on this. And we'll talk about it again in the September board meeting. And the other thing I'd like to say is anything we as a board can do to kind of set the tone for the employees to feel comfortable providing feedback through this process, I would want to do that. I know it can be intimidating as an employee providing comments, to the board, especially on something that's this personal. But with that said, I think part of our goal is to set a atmosphere of kind of trust. And, my hope is that if employees at the meeting in September want to provide comments to us as the board, either positive or negative, towards what we're talking about, that they could feel comfortable doing that and not feel that that by doing so would cause them to be viewed either better or worse by the board. So I'll just say that.
And one further thing, I would like the message to go out to the staff and employees that, hey, we're facing a belt tightening for everything, and this is all part of the program. We're looking at everything. That would be a message I don't know how to get it out, but that's my thought.
Okay. Thank you. Also, there was some discussion of class and comp. It's related, but that's a separate topic. So I think on that, before we go further down that path, that would warrant a separate agenda item at some point in the future. And then the other thing I would suggest is there's class and comp, and then there's compensation study. And those are two different things. Class and comp is more involved, it takes longer. And it's not uncommon for agencies to do a class and comp and then a few years later do a compensation study only, as opposed to doing the full-on classification effort, which takes a lot of employee time, management time, and agency time to conduct the classification portion. So I think if we're going to have that conversation about do we do it or not, we also consider, is it full class and comp or is it comp only?
Thank you.
Okay, I need a moment to pull my agenda back up because I was looking at the PowerPoint, so bear with me, please.
We're now on item number 4.
Yeah, so item number 4 is approval of the working out of classification policy. And I'm guessing Vicky's going to be the lead on this as well.
Yeah, Vicky will be the lead as well.
Okay, go ahead, Vicky.
All right, thank you. We've had a brief discussion about this in previous board meetings, but when vacancies and extended leaves or additional duties occur within the agency, a working out of class policy would be helpful in allowing additional pay to the employee or employees that may be performing those additional duties during that transitional time. And historically, the agency has been without a policy for any employee that's working out of class and or performing extra duties. So we are bringing forth today a working out of classification policy that will basically cover an employee performing additional duties, working out of classification or serving in an interim position. The employee will, per the policy, the employee will always remain in their existing position, but then they will receive some additional pay above and beyond their normal rate of pay for performing those additional duties. Generally speaking, the pay increase will be a 5% pay increase, but there would be cases when we may look at paying an additional amount above and beyond the 5%. Generally speaking, the assignment would last less than 60 days. And we believe we've covered all the bases in here, but again, the employee would continue in their existing position and perform some additional duties, receive some additional pay. So any questions on the policy?
No questions from Blake?
Now, this is a nice policy. I think it'll help. I would say down under the rate of pay portion of it, where you talk about, a 5% increase. The rate of pay exception shall be made based on board of directors approval. It seems to me that, that would be a general manager determination. I don't know whether the board wants to make, those determinations. It seems, if, somebody's getting, there's a significant increase in the responsibility and they're not just backfilling their own position and a little bit of something else, but really taking on some new position. And, I don't know that needs to go back to the board of directors. That should be something that I think the general manager should make that determination. So I recommend we change that language.
Okay.
I agree with that, as long as you put a cap on it, as, as a 5% cap or whatever. If it goes beyond that, it comes back to the board.
Well, I mean, that's what they've said, is that they shall generally see 5% exceptions to the 5%. I think that should be I believe that should be a GM decision, not a board decision.
Correct.
Okay, I thought you just said you.
No, I mean, if it's above that level of compensation, I think it should come back to the board. But we allow the general manager to make that decision as far as working out of classification up to a 5% increase.
All right, I think we're talking at odds here.
Well, if I understand correctly, the current policy says 5%, but subject to board approval. Is that what you were?
Rate of pay exceptions may be made based on general manager approval. That's Blake's comment. I think what Lane was saying is that if that 5% were to go above and beyond 10%, is that what you meant, Lane? Is that
That
what
is
you're saying?
correct.
Then he would want that to go for board approval.
So if the general manager wanted to do something that was inconsistent with the policy, because policy is
Correct.
5%, if the general manager wants to do something greater than is called for by the policy, that should come to the board. Is what I
Is that what
think.
you meant, Lane?
Right. That is exactly.
While it's coming to the board, does that retroactive clause kick in and they're not getting the pay retroactively? Or it just seems to me that the guy's going to wait a month and that's not going to count if that retroactive statement on that policy covers that.
That statement was put in there to indicate that we would not put an employee into that position, into working out of classification position, until such time as the paperwork had been signed and it was all made official.
Well, and just going back again to the policy, you have 3 different conditions for working out of class. The first is just additional duties and responsibilities outside of the employee's existing classification or higher level responsibility. That seems to me that that's the 5%. And conditions 2 and 3, you're actually placing an employee temporarily into a known other classification. Someone's filling in as a supervisor, or like in Richard's case right now, as a general manager, that the compensation and the condition 1 could be 5%, but under conditions 2 and 3, that they should be placed at the, next closest but higher step level in that classification while they're in it. Richard, does that, would you prefer that? Or, I think that we've done that here at TSD when we've had a supervisor out on extended leave and we had to appoint a field worker to fill that supervisory position. We paid them to do on an interim basis out of classification at the supervisory pay while they perform those duties, as opposed to just a 5% bump.
We could certainly do that. I think the way it was drafted was for a 5% bump and not necessarily the pay scale of the supervisory position in that scenario. And then on scenario 1, I'd propose that we give some flexibility to say 5, but anything more than, a range of 5 to 10%, but anything more than 10% would require board approval.
Okay, Dale, you had your hand raised a moment ago.
Yeah, how often does this scenario take place, Richard? Is this something that happens frequently, or what's the status on frequency on this issue?
I would say it's fairly infrequent since I've been here. In the last 4 years, I can think of maybe three or four times this would be utilized, but it would have been nice to have it. This does, and this is a follow-up to the previous board meeting in an effort to provide coverage for me in the event that I'm out as the interim, so that we can have somebody step into this role while I'm out. So just wanted to point that out. But it's, maybe once a year. It really depends on, it's usually someone's out for an extended period of time, birth of a child, health issues, those kind of things. It's not with the intent of covering vacation or those kind of leave types.
Yeah, I'd like to refer back to what Blake has mentioned, and that if the frequency of how this takes place is once a year or something such as this, I think that the decisions should be in the hands of the general manager.
Okay, thanks.
So basically I think the current policy is good. I would just remove board of directors and replace with general manager. That's what we pay the general manager to do, is to hire, do compensation recommendations. And this seems within their scope, and it gets rid of that retroactive issue that Dave Smeltzer raised. If they have to wait till a board meeting to get our approval, which could take over a month, while the person's still performing those duties, and we've clearly stated no retroactive pay, that's problematic. I think that's. But
I'm good with that. I think it's
I think generally let's leave it at generally 5%, and exceptions may be made based on requiring a general manager approval. Vicky, does that work from a CalPERS, compensation and, things get messy quick? Will that work?
I did reach out to CalPERS just to get a determination on this. They do allow agencies to have a policy similar to this. So yes, it does not this policy does not qualify. It's
Not PERSable
I'm
income.
sorry. Yes, thank you. Thank you. I think it is reported as special pay, but it is not PERSable. I did want to point out the difference between 1, 2, and 3, only because you brought them up. Item number 1 is really there are some additional duties or an assignment that really doesn't fall in anyone's job description necessarily, but it's at a higher level that the employee would be asked to perform. Number 2 is an employee performing the majority of duties of a different position. And number 3 really being serving in a higher classification in an interim position. So just again, wanted to clarify those, but yes. So really long answer, yes, they did reach out to CalPERS and it is allowed.
Okay. So I think Blake is suggesting that, that the last sentence or the last 2 sentences out of rate of pay be deleted? Is that your recommendation, Blake? Or
No, just we substitute in the second to last sentence in rate of pay, we substitute board of directors with general manager.
Okay.
Give this authority for out of class compensation determination to the general manager.
Okay.
Okay, so I just want to understand, again, just make sure we're all clear on this. So the policy says generally you're going to get 5%, and then the rate of pay exceptions may be made. So are people interpreting that to mean that for instance, if the general manager decides it should be 10%, that we're granting that authority, or 15%? Okay. So I would suggest we would say rate of pay exceptions to the, somewhere in that second sentence, I would suggest we refer to the 5%. Because we're kind of setting, I mean, we're kind of parsing words here, but.
Say that again, Dan, I'm sorry.
Well, I think for clarity, if we said rate of pay exceptions in excess of the 5%, maybe made based on general manager approval,
Okay,
makes it clear that the 5% is the norm. And if the GM thinks there's circumstances out of the ordinary to increase that, then.
okay,
that's what it is.
understood.
Are you okay with that, Lane?
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Go for it.
Okay, is there any public comment on this item?
There's no public comment for this item.
Would any member of the board care to make a motion?
I'll move
Make-
that we, approve the work out of class classification policy with the changes recommended.
Second.
Thanks, Blake. Thanks, Lane. Any further board discussion? Seeing none, those in, roll call, please, Rochelle.
Director Chesson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
Director Cox,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
and President Wilkins.
Yes,
Motion approved.
thank you. Next on our agenda is Resolution 13-2022 related to investment of monies in the local agency investment fund. Is this Crystal?
Yes. So this is just updating an old resolution, Resolution 8-2017, allowing for the following 1 through 8 titles to be able to authorize the investment of monies in the local agency investment fund. So it's just updating the signature authority for LEAF.
I'll move to accept.
Second.
Moved by Blake, seconded by Lane. Any further board discussion? Rochelle, is there any public comment on this item?
No public comment.
All right, thank you. Would any, so we've got a motion and a second. Rochelle, if you could do roll call, please.
Director Chesson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
Director Cox,
Yes.
and Director Smelser,
Yes.
and President Wilkins.
Yes.
Motion approved.
All right, next is approval for the telephone upgrade. And I think this is Richard.
Yeah, I'll be taking this one. So in a nutshell, the current phone system was installed in 2010. It's software-based voice over internet, no longer supported. So during the budget process, we had budgeted to perform an upgrade. The proposal came in at $30,880 with our budgeted amount of being $40,000. We are asking to move it forward using the National Cooperative Purchasing Alliance, which is a consortium similar to the other government purchasing programs that exist. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Did you review any other the voice over IP or is this the only one you looked at?
This matches up with our current equipment. So this is the only one we move forward with, is keeping equipment in kind and upgrading.
Okay, so you don't have to get all new phones and everything all the way through?
We'll be able to reutilize some of the phones, but not all of
Okay,
them.
yeah, because, okay.
Richard, will there still be just the single phone in number, the 2525, or will you be able to call directly to people's workstations?
Yeah, with the upgrade, we'll have it where you can call directly to have a directory. So we'll be doing away with just one line in and then having to wait. Yes.
Great.
Great.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Director Cox and second by Director Lewis to award the telephone upgrade. Is there any public comment on this item, Rochelle?
No public comment.
Okay, no public comment. Is there any further board discussion on this? All right, seeing none, Rochelle, if you could take roll call, please.
Yes, Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
Director Cox,
Yes,
Director Smelser,
Yes.
and President Wilkins.
Yes,
Motion approved.
thank you. Next is discussion and possible action on Placer County LAFCO alternate special district commissioner.
Actually, you're one ahead. There's
Yeah,
Oh.
There's a-
B7.
Oh, yeah,
Seven.
I jumped ahead. Thank you.
Mhm.
And I apologize. Item 7 is discussion concerning use of TTSA open space and buffer land around the treatment plant by recreationists or others and related liabilities.
Yeah, so wanted to bring it to the board today to have a discussion. Over the years, staff has noticed a dramatic increase in the use of the buffer space for recreational use. Unfortunately, that's also brought along with it vandalism and an increase of off-road vehicles, as well as camping and, for lack of a better word, living on turnouts. You see people camped out in the mornings. So staff wanted to bring it to the board's attention and have a discussion. Our understanding is that historically, the approach has been to leave the buffer space open for the beneficial use of the public, to do dog walking, et cetera. But it's starting to come at an additional concern to staff as far as having to chase people off that are off-roading out into the disposal fields and well sites. So with that, I'll turn it over to the board to have a discussion. Staff is looking for some direction on whether to maintain the open space as is, move forward with some sort of restrictions, and some guidance there so that we could move forward with that and come back to the board at a future date.
Thanks, Richard. A question, just the degree to which we've got people kind of posting up and sleeping out there. Is that, how would you describe that? Is that kind of like sleeping in the back of the car or the cab over camper, then moving along the next day, or are people like posting up for multiple days in a row out there?
Mostly what we've seen is the former, sleeping in a cab over camper. Perhaps they've moved into the area and they're working in the area and they're just finding a place to stay for the night, and then they go to work and then they show up the next, it's repetitive. It's not just a one and done like someone coming through the area. It's more of the camper spot to live instead of renting or getting housing up here. And then go to work the next day, and then they show up that night and they're there in the morning as we come in the morning.
Okay, so they're cycling back and forth.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, this will be a fun topic.
Yeah, historically, it's been, we've always looked at protecting the buffer zone around the plant. Well, if we need to put more signage up, put some more boulders up, we want to protect our boundary limits, there. I mean, we do occasionally, for a special event, let somebody come in and utilize something. But if that creates a repetitive use, maybe we ought to reconsider that. But the buffer zone around the plant has always been critical to the operation of the plant. We have one instance where we had a truck driver run through when we had a chlorine issue, and he had a issue with that being affected. But we want to protect the public in the best manner around our plant with all the chemicals and everything else going on here.
Dale.
yeah, we had an issue last year that we had a lot of drag racing going on our roads out there, a lot of display of speed and other things, motorcycles doing donuts, and I'll tell you, we talked to council about this and where our liability lies with the unavailable policing of our buffer zone, and I see it's going to do nothing but get worse. I don't and haven't seen any graffiti on our boulder out there at the entrance to the plant. But this is just a minor issue as compared to what we're looking at moving forward. And people that are camping out on our property because of lack of housing, and we've got to be really able to get this under control. And one of the things that I question in this issue is how are we going to police this? Is we going to have Nevada County come out here occasionally and move people on that are sleeping, you know, or overnighting in their campers, and that leads to campfires, that leads to risk of fire. I mean, how are we going to police this issue?
Thanks, Dale. Dave.
Yeah, I just bicycled through there yesterday. There wasn't a lot of, I didn't put any graffiti on your rock, Dale. Anyway, with a group, we bicycled through there, and it was nice to have that down the road, dodging the trucks and so forth. But what I was surprised at is a lack of signage. I think our first step would be putting up some signs and telling people that this is TTSA land and no camping and no off-roading, or some whatever looks good. But the group I was with, none of them realized that this was our buffer zone. And, you know, we talked about it a bit, but I think signage is the first step.
I think the signage is critical, and also when we allow like the running group or whatever that was that time, that if anybody uses any part of our property, that when they're finished, they rehabilitate it. You know, so it doesn't become a practice area for running or from dirt biking or from you know, BMXing. You know, we need to protect our area, and we need to tell people that this is plant property, and and those uses are prohibited.
Thanks, Lane. Blake.
Yeah, just, I guess, echo what everybody else has said. I don't want to put a fence up around all that open space, but I think possibly some additional signage, if there's obvious access points, particularly for vehicles, get some rocks to block those off, or gates as appropriate. And then, you know, it'd be nice to work hand in hand, ideally with, I think we're within the town's jurisdiction and their policing authority, to, you know, work with them to figure out what we need to do so that, you know, when our staff observes a nuisance behavior out there, not just casual, you know, non-nuisance, but a nuisance situation, that we have the right to, you know, call on a policing authority. I don't want our staff out there trying to make citizens arrests or have confrontational interactions with, you know, problematic folks. That's the job of you know, the sheriffs or the police. So I think it requires, you know, coordination with them so that we've done what we need to do so that they feel they can come in and take the appropriate steps to, you know, get the folks off the property. And we're not, you know, remiss on our part in terms of a lack of appropriate signage.
I think it's a liability deal too. I mean, if, you know, it just protects. I mean, I have 63 acres here, and I had to go. It's like Dale said, the problem with people sleeping out on the property, with fires, with everything else. You know, I had to be proactive, and I got signs around my places on any of the entrances. And there again, we can't fence everything. You just got to make it so it's less. It's not an attractive nuisance. And with signage by out there saying that you know, this recreation is unacceptable at this point is key. I mean, especially down by the bridge in you know, on the old Tyker property in there, people come right off that trail and up through there. You know, that's, I mean, there's no signage or anything, so if we can get some more signage off the trail too, it'd be helpful.
Thanks. I'm in general agreement with what I've heard. You know, for me, I like to think about the different types of use that's occurring. You know, I'm not interested in this being an area that people come to camp and stay overnight at. In terms of, you know, passive recreational use, you know, people on bikes, people on foot, you know, our plant perimeter where all of our critical infrastructure is fenced. We had that event where, you know, a person scaled the fence, you know, a couple months ago, and that was, I think, unique. I'm not aware that that's happened other than that time. But, you know, folks like Dave, you know, people that are walking dogs and kind of engaging in daytime passive use of the property, as long as they're not being malicious, I really don't have a problem with that. I think it's more the overnight use that, from my perspective, we really need to be discouraging.
Well, the off-roading too needs to be really,
Yeah, we don't want new roads showing up out there, and new wheel tracks. I fully agree with that. And I also agree with, you know, the notion of I'm guessing where the camping is happening is probably in areas where it's disturbed dirt, kind of looks like pull-out areas. I don't know, are people like going out in the middle of the fields and setting up camp out there?
Most of that is in the turnout areas. We've had occasion where they've off-roaded out into the field a little bit more, but that's been more rare.
So if we would have like no camping signs and then augment that with boulders to close off some of the turnout areas to really, from my perspective, it's really focusing on that nighttime use and the nighttime camping and off-roading type activities is what I would be most, I think would be the top priority to. Dave?
the local police or the Truckee Town Police, is that what we're covered by?
Yes,
Yes.
we're in their jurisdiction.
And so would it be smart to have a call into them when you see somebody out there and maybe ask them to patrol that on a random basis to run the guys out?
What I would recommend would be for Richard to contact the Truckee police chief and just let him know that we're looking to add some signage and we're looking to discourage camping activity and off-roading activity out there. And do two things. One, find out from a police perspective what we can do to make the police be in a better position to enforce violations of that, and also to understand to what degree the police will enforce that. Because I know there's different authorities that the police department has, and when it comes to private property, which I know that we're a public agency, but we're a private landowner, you know, the police department enforcing things on private property, I know there's a certain amount they can do and a certain amount they can't do. And some of it can depend on the signage and those types of things. So I think Richard talking to the police department before we take any action out there would be useful, just so we've got a realistic expectation of what the police will or will not do, would be helpful.
Richard, how often do we encounter day fishermen out there pulling into our turnouts and driving as close as they can to the river, parking their car and then going fishing? Is this something that you see frequently?
I personally have only seen that a couple times. Most of the day use tends to be the boulderers. They'll park at the little turnout that's fairly close to the front entrance and then go to a boulder that's out there and climb on it. The other high usage, typically recreational type usage, is dog walkers. But but the actual fishermen, and I'll defer to Michael and Jay, they've been here quite a while and they've probably seen more than I. I've only seen that a couple times where they're parking up and then trekking down to the river.
Yeah, I've seen the fishermen, I'd say maybe once a week kind of frequency on, during a lunchtime walk, so like it probably happens during non-lunchtime hours also. So I'd say because of instances in which I'm not observing it, maybe once every 2 to 3 days, you got a fisherman parking near our entrance and walking down.
Right. So parking near the entrance on the side of the road versus kind of wheeling out across the field, in my opinion, are two different things. A moment ago, we were talking about closing the camping areas, but it sounds like some of these pull-out areas are also convenient, parking spots that are off the road. So if someone wants to walk to the river or walk to a fishing spot or go to a bouldering spot, that they're doing it in a reasonably responsible way. I mean, are we trying to shut all that kind of activity out too? That gives me a little bit of caution.
I think you want to do it, no trespassing signs around there. I mean, it's, who knows if we get a chemical, we don't want people intruding down around the plant. In case there is an accident, we want to protect the public the best we can. And I think we just need to post those signs up there, no trespassing. And leave it be. How many people, 90% of that time will work. It's 10% that you got to worry about.
I think most fishermen access from the other side of the river anyway.
Right.
Be easier.
I'd like to ask council, where our liability lies. Do we cover our liability by signage, or is this, are we going to have to take this to another level?
Yeah, thanks, Dale. I wanted to comment on that and also respond to some Elaine's comments. Significantly, TTSA is a local government agency, and so your liability is governed by laws different than Elaine's private golf course, for example. And California law actually reflects a state policy to encourage public use of these types of open space lands. State and local government agencies own a lot of property in California, and a lot of it's nice open space property that people want to access and use for some of the non-intrusive uses that you guys have talked about. So as a consequence, the key state law, which is called the Government Claims Act, provides several immunities from liability for things like accessing unpaved access roads, recreational activities, natural conditions of unimproved property. So a lot of the liability worries that you may get sued by somebody using your property, that to me is not a reason, to take action. And I had some correspondence with Richard about this a couple of weeks ago, and I said, you really ought to focus on issues of concern to the agency, damage to your property by off-roading, fire risk, nuisance type activities. Somebody earlier made the distinction between, casual unintrusive use versus a nuisance activity. I think that's a good distinction, is kind of focus on nuisance type behavior. But I wouldn't be too worried about liabilities to third parties who are injured from using your property because of these several immunities, and because state policy actually encourages the agency to retain sort of an open space policy regarding these lands, and instead the agency ought to focus on those nuisance activities and other things that pose a risk to the agency and its facilities and its workers.
Thanks, Dick. So let's see, we've had, I guess, other questions or comments from board members.
Yeah, one more thing about the liability. well, I was looking at our insurance premium, it's pretty high there, but that's for the plant. Does that cover, say that woman that came into the facility, had she caused damage, I'm sure that would have been covered. But when she set that fire, if they ever prove all this stuff, didn't we lose our phone lines and some other stuff? Will we be compensated? Is that covered somehow in our insurance?
So I did reach out to our insurance carrier for what would be covered in relation to the damaged property, which for us was mostly trees and shrub. That is not covered. Had it been a installed landscaping where we had planted those trees and done landscaping out there, that would have been. As far as the phone lines and the fiber optic, that all runs in a AT&T easement, and it's their infrastructure. So we incurred no cost for the repairs to that. That was all incurred by AT&T. And I do have an update on the fire, so I'll touch more on that when we get to that, the general manager's report, and I can give a little more information.
Thanks, Richard. So, I heard Lane, suggest, no trespassing signs of some type. I'm not sure that I agree with that, because that's basically telling people you are not allowed to step foot on this property. And we don't want people inside the plant perimeter, but I have some concern with, us as a public agency that owns, I think, close to 1,200 acres of prime open space, messaging to the public that they are not allowed to step foot on it. I think we don't want people driving on it. We don't want people camping on it. But if people want to walk on it, if they want to park on the side of the road and access, the Truckee River, access the kind of a back door to the Martis Creek Recreation Area, I think that should be okay. And that I may be kind of looking at this fundamentally differently than some of the other directors, but that's where I'm at with it.
Yeah, I mean, we always looked at trying to increase that perimeter around the plant for safety purposes. I mean, maybe you don't go to no trespassing, but maybe with signs saying this is TTSA property, letting the public know that, and moving, like you said, move some boulders in with there's a road being created or whatever, but maybe we do it in a less evasive way.
Yeah, I mean, camping prohibited, overnight parking prohibited.
Off-roading.
Off-road vehicles.
I'm fine with all that, but no trespassing to me feels like it's a step too far.
And I haven't looked, but do we have signage up around the facility itself on the fencing indicating no trespassing? Are there signs? I don't know.
Yeah. The facility, anything inside the fence perimeter, we shouldn't have anyone in there that's unauthorized at any time. I fully agree.
Right, but I'm asking, do we have signage up indicating that?
Currently, there is no signage on the perimeter fence.
Well, that might be a step to take too.
I think that maybe when you sit back and have these signs made, you could be specific in stating that casual use is okay, but off-road vehicles, motorcycles, ATVs, and that type of off-road use is strictly prohibitive. And
along with overnight camping.
However, one of the things that I was worried about last year, and I haven't seen a whole lot of rubber marks on our road out there, is that stretch from the bus barn to the Tigert fencing there, the Tigert entrance, that was a drag strip, a full-blown drag strip. on numerous occasions last year. And that really makes me nervous, thinking that when you're drag racing, you could reach the speeds of, 100 plus miles an hour down that road. And, that's just a disaster waiting to happen, and have it happen on our property. I'm just, it makes me nervous to think that something like that could happen and we'd be held liable. And we had talked about that, council, last year when we had a lot of displays of speed out there on that road. And, once again, if we are not in a liability position, I would say, let's not talk about it, or let's not try to police it. But you know what, it's happening. It's happening there frequently. And like I say, I haven't seen the black rubber marks and the donuts and everything that we had out there last year or last summer, but that's not to say that it could happen again.
And Dale, that's a significantly different legal analysis. It's sort of a separate issue than the issue we're talking about on use of the open space land, because that's use of an improved road that's a private road, partially owned and maintained by the agency and Teichert, and that's a more complicated liability analysis. So if there are, I think management should approach the issue you just outlined as a separate one, that if there are indications of abuse and misuse of that road, you need to coordinate closely with Truckee PD and get them out there and try and get them to maintain that, because that's sort of a separate issue if you have vehicles misusing the roadway as compared to recreationists using the buffer land. Those are apples and oranges kind of issues. Obviously, they're connected because it's all about access, but I would approach the management of those two types of property differently.
So a question, probably the easiest way to screw up a drag strip, put a speed bump somewhere in the middle of it. And what's the liability with that?
You can maybe do that. You want to coordinate closely with Teichert that uses that road pretty heavily, and
Yeah.
What impacts that could have, and there may be other speed bumps, speed tables, speed other things that the trucks can tolerate better than others. I don't know, but that's a good practical issue that may be worthy of discussion with Teichert.
Just a comment on speed bumps on the road, that would make snow removal extremely difficult.
Yeah.
The other thing, Dale, I know what you're talking about, because that group that was abusing, being irresponsible on Georgia Drive was doing similar things elsewhere in town. I think the police were successful in getting them to stop doing that. I'm not aware that it's been an issue this year. My thought is that that's something we continue to monitor. If we find that kind of abuse occurring again, then we maybe ask staff to notify us as the board, and we can maybe look at options to mitigate it should it come up again.
Yeah, and it's in order to move this agenda item along, I would have to chime in with Lane that we should get some signage out there, probably right after the bus barn there. There's an area there where we could post some signs and be specific, in as much as we don't want camping, we don't want off-road vehicles, although casual use, fishing, dog walking, bird watching, or whatever would be allowed. And let's just see where it goes.
Yeah, I'd also, one other kind of legal question, Dick, that you don't need to answer right now, but I know there's been recent court rulings, I think all the way up to the US Supreme Court as it relates to prohibitions of camping on public property. I think it's been more focused on like city parks, sidewalks, city rights of way, those types of things. But I think, so I know in my work at the town, when we've been trying to deal with people camping on the road rights of way, we actually have been unable from a legal standpoint to post no camping signs. What we can do is we can post, no parking 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. type signs. So this is a slightly different situation in that it's, property that's owned by a regional wastewater treatment plant. I don't know what the legal analysis of that looks like, but it would be worth looking at that to see if we can post it no camping or if we have to post it no parking during certain time periods. And to not have an issue there, because there's been public agencies that have been sued over camping bans because of some of these court rulings that have come out in the last couple of years.
I am familiar with that issue. I am a resident of the city of Sacramento, so I live that issue every day. It is a challenge, and I think those laws, it's principally the Martin versus City of Boise case. I think those laws apply equally to TTSA and management of its open space lands. Your fenced treatment plant property is different, but your open space lands, I think it would be a challenge if you try to more aggressively enforce no camping out there. I think a lot can be done. I like the idea of focusing on the areas that the campers are using and try to make those areas more inhospitable through boulders or other things may be the most practicable approach as opposed to trying to enforce the no camping. But I will work with Richard and give him some advice on that.
Yeah, and can we do no parking if we can't do no camping during certain time periods?
Yeah.
Okay, Richard, do you feel like you've got an adequate sense of the board on this topic?
I do. Yeah. So I'll move forward with what I feel the direction is that I received today and provide update, working with Dick on signage and verbiage, as well as Truckee PD on what their needs are.
Great, thank you. Okay, now item 8, discussion and possible action on Placer County LAFCO alternate special district commissioner.
Yeah, so LAFCO has reached out. They are looking for an alternate special district representative. They're asking the agencies to consider nominating someone from their board to be that representative. So that's what we're bringing to the board today, is consideration of nominating one of the board of directors to possibly sit in that seat.
I nominate Lane Lewis.
I'm not going to be on the board of directors that long.
Well,
So my understanding, Richard, is this is a alternate special district seat. There's probably 50 or 100 special districts in Placer County, that every single special district within the county would have been extended this invitation. So I don't think we need to feel an obligation to nominate someone unless there's one of us who really wants to do this.
And my understanding is the same as yours.
So I guess it's probably a question of, is there anyone who's interested in being an alternate special district LAFCO representative? And if not, I would suggest we not nominate anyone. If someone is interested in it, then I would suggest that we nominate them.
Thanks, Dale, but no thanks.
I'm not seeing anyone raise their hand.
I know.
So do we need to take formal action on this? I think we would need to take formal action to nominate someone. I think if we choose not to nominate someone, then I don't think we need action for that. Okay, I got the thumbs up for Dick. So seeing that there was no nominations on that, I would ask, is there any public comment on this item, Rochelle? Whoops, I think you said no public comment, but you were muted.
Sorry, I've been talking for a few minutes. No public comment.
I also, I think, just recognize that I don't believe I took public comment on the open space discussion.
You did not, but we did not have any public comment.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Item 9, approval of resolution 14-2022, commending Director Lewis for his dedicated service to the board for 30 years. So first of all, thank you, Richard, for putting this together, and Rochelle. Thank you, Lane. You know, I've learned a lot from you. I've really enjoyed getting to know you on the board for the, I don't know, 6 years or so that we've overlapped. You bring a lot to the agency. Your financial stewardship is commendable, and really your historical knowledge of the agency, of where we've been and where we're headed has been great to have that perspective, you know, at least, you know, for me, to have you providing that perspective on the board. I've really enjoyed getting to know you as a person, and I just want to say thanks. You know, 30 years of service, you know, to a board that pays $100 a week, or $100 a month, I should say. You know, that's community service. It's not something that is a glory role. And so, you know, thank you for your time and willingness to do that.
You know, it's been an honor and a privilege to serve on the TTSA board for that period of time. And, you know, I was just reflecting back, you know, last night, as far as when I first started out, I only had one son. Now I got 4 boys, 5 grandchildren, and we've transitioned to this period. And I don't think, you know, part of the fact is, you know, whenever I looked at our staff coming up, TTSA staff, and one person retiring, I always looked at how we're going to replace that person. And, you know, it has been a seamless transition all the way through. It seems like every person that we get in a new staff positions, you know, has been almost better than the person before. And it's to that nature that the dedication of the employees, the staff, everybody's been just outstanding. And I'm going to miss the camaraderie with everybody. But you know what? It's, you know, it is, I'm transitioning out, and Scott Wilson will be coming in. And, you know, I know you guys will give him the opportunity, and just like you gave me. And as I say, I just want to thank everybody from legal counsel to the staff to the employees. You've made my time on the board so much easier by providing the information. I mean, heck, I mean, Jay, Richard, I mean, whenever I ask a question, you have the answers, Michael also. And it's been invaluable to me to have that information to make the right decisions. And I always came to every meeting with the attitude, how can we make TTSA a better place today? And I believe I'm leading TTSA in a better place today.
I think so.
Absolutely.
So anyway,
Other
I'll
questions?
miss you guys.
Yeah. Other comments from other board members?
Enjoy your free time, Lane.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is there any public comment on this item, Rochelle?
I just have one quick question. There's no one else with, or not question, statement. There's no one else with public comment. But when we got the news that Director Lewis would be leaving us, we pulled together and got you a gift.
Oh, nice.
So
I
along
guess
with-
I will come on in and pick her up, okay? Maybe I could meet, say goodbye to the staff in person. That's what I miss with being a Zoom meeting, but, I can't say goodbye to you guys in person, but, you guys always know where I'm at, and I cherish the time we've had, and hopefully you'll stop by once in a while and say hi.
I actually have some information for you about that. I'll talk to you after the meeting.
Okay,
So we'll
thank
make an
you.
appointment for you to come and see us.
Oh, okay, thank you.
All right,
Go ahead.
thank you. Would anyone care to move to approve resolution 14-2022?
So moved.
Second,
Moved by Director Cox, seconded by Director Smeltzer. And again, thank you, Lane. Like I said, I've really enjoyed getting to know you, and I want to say thanks for being a mentor to me and to others on this board, and wish you all the best.
Thank you. It's more than just being a director. It's the friendship that I've made with all you guys. And gals. It's important.
Excellent. Okay, so we've had a motion and a second, Rochelle. We've taken public comment and there was none. Could you take roll call, please, Rochelle?
Yes. Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Lewis.
I guess I vote.
I don't know if we abstain that one or not, but Director Cox,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
yes.
and President Wilkins.
Yes,
Motion approved.
great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is discussion of in-person Board of Directors meeting. Board members, what's your pleasure? You want to stay virtual next month, or do you want to go in person? Lane?
Yeah, if I could chime in, I think it'd be really important with Scott coming on board that if at all possible, we have a in-person meeting so you guys can get acquainted with him. It's always, we can Zoom, but it's more personal when you get to see that person in person.
Yeah.
I think that would be important for the next board meeting.
Yeah, I know it was interesting, being on this board for over a year with Dave before we actually met like once or maybe twice.
Yeah.
It was nice to meet in person.
Yeah.
Thoughts from the other board members or staff? Any particular predisposition one way or another, Richard?
I would agree with Director Lewis, with a new director coming on board, as well as the other topics that we'll be discussing. I think in person would be much preferred.
Other board members, you want to go for an in-person in September?
Yes.
Okay. All right, let's go for it.
Good idea.
Okay, so we'll make that the plan. All right, next on the agenda is management team reports, and first would be the operations department report. Michael.
Board of Directors, President Wilkins, for the Operations Department, for the July report. All plant waste discharge requirements were met for the month, and the plant performed well through the month. We continue to add the sodium hydroxide to the effluent to maintain the 7 pH. And we are continuing to work on the water information management solutions implementation. We had 0 completed work orders, 1 pending. For the lab, we had staff perform necessary laboratory testing. Laboratory Informational Management System LIMS implementation is ongoing. Live testing has commenced. The expected completion date of July 22nd has been extended due to unanticipated delays. And staff have completed their preparation of the laboratory quality manual and other documents in accordance with the NELAC Institute, the TNI standards. And the lab is in the process of implementing a quality system check with a third-party outside vendor. Any questions for the operations department?
Any questions from board members?
No, we did get a, in our warrants there, the LIMS cost, the monthly fee, that's an ongoing fee that's gonna be the management fee every month.
No, there's an annual fee that is
Okay.
associated with that LIM system, and there'll also be one with the WIMS for the support, the ongoing support that we'll receive from them. But no, that was part of the progress payment based on the amount of work that's been completed to this point.
Okay, so that's not a month, it's set on monthly,
Yeah.
on
No,
there, $7,300. I go, oh, great, that's a pretty high cost, but that's the implementation cost, correct?
Yes. That's
Okay,
part of
thank
it.
you. Okay, thanks, Michael.
Thanks, Mike. Other questions from other board members? Okay, and for the public's benefit, after we've received all of the department reports, we'll take public comment on them. So next would be the maintenance department report. You have this, Mike, Richard?
Yeah, so good morning again, President Wilkins, Board of Directors. So up first is work orders completed and our pending numbers. So just give you a second to digest those. And then next slide, Rochelle. So again, ongoing projects, a lot of software support stuff. We've been firewall configurations and install for IT security. We've been doing a Wi-Fi upgrade throughout the facility, which has also allowed us to provide a public Wi-Fi to our employees in key areas, which seemed well received. Continue with CMMS Lucid PM implementation. As Michael mentioned, IT's providing WIMS project support as well as LIMS. And then we've been supporting the roofing and coating projects that engineering's been working on this summer. And then last IT item, website development. So we're continuing to move forward with the new website development, and we'll have that coming out shortly. Maintenance projects, few items I'll highlight. LED lighting project, we've been moving that forward, and that included the AWT and CNCT control rooms. Those lighting have been switched over to LED in preparation for the upcoming projects that are going to be going on in there. Added an entrance pedestrian walkthrough gate, so we're now doing a walkway so we can keep that clear to snow in the wintertime. Again, was a month of 2 water leaks that we've finally gotten out in front of. Took on a lime slurry piping project, replacing the 30-year-old piping that runs from the plant, runs through the plant. Continuing to work on our FLODAR installation. We have the first one in and we're working on the second one. Next slide, please. So here's a photo of the AWT PLC upgrade. So you can see the old nice 1970s salmon colored panels that exist. And as the staff remove obsolete instruments, they're covering it with the nice shiny plexiglass, I'll call it. So it has a nice appearance, nice professional appearance. Next slide, please. So there's the work that photo of the work we were doing at the front gate. Mentioned on the previous slide was a new louver for one of the centrifuges. And there you can see the lighting that was completed in the CNCT area, as well as the lab area. That work was just finishing up. So the tiles were replaced since the photo was taken. And I think that's it for maintenance. Any questions?
Any questions from the board? All right, seeing none, next will be the engineering department report from Jay.
Good morning, President Wilkins, directors. Engineering department report, it is construction season, so we got the chlorine scrubber improvements project. They've mobilized some of the materials on site, some storage boxes to receive equipment and such. There will be a little bit of prep activity done soon here. Roof repair is underway. We have a couple areas of the roof that they're currently working on. Plant coating project, we're getting close to wrapping up on that. That hit 2 of our major clarifiers. Control room upgrades project, we're doing pre-construction and submittal activities. Digital scanning of sewer lines project, We're doing submittals on that. The digital scanning activities are scheduled for after Labor Day. No projects in bid phase. Next slide, please. The digestion improvement study, we've just received a draft report, so we're going to be reviewing that internally and giving feedback to our consultant. The filter inflow and condition assessment project is ongoing. We're waiting for equipment to arrive for that. Photos. So we have kind of before and after pictures here for the roof. The photos you're seeing here are over corridor 6A in the vicinity of facility 4. On the left, you can see the intact roof before it was torn off, and the surface prepped for the new roof, which is the right-hand photo. Next slide, please. And then this is the paint job or the coating job on the left. The stripper basin 57. After having received the finish coat, the scaffolding hadn't been removed yet, and so we had since rebuilt things like walkways and guardrails, handrails, etc. And the right-hand side shows installation of the dust containment. And since this photo was taken, we've completed our finish coats, saved some of the spark testing and touch-up work that needs to be completed. And I think that may be the last slide. Any questions?
Wayne?
Yeah, Jay, with regards to the digestion improvement study, is there anything new that came out that didn't come out in the Corolla report on that?
Yeah, I mean, the Corolla report was very generic and
Right.
was not detailed. And that's why we embarked on this study. More details have been fleshed out in terms of what exactly needs to be, replaced and what needs to be upgraded, et cetera. And so that's what we're going to be giving them feedback on this draft report. And I don't want to present anything until we know, that, okay, this is the direction we're going in for sure. The draft concepts are on the table right now for discussion.
Great. Thank
Looks
you.
like maybe Director Lewis is frozen. Any follow-up questions?
I'm just, concerned, are you going to get back information regarding in the digesters? Once we do this, it's going to extend the useful life of it 15 years, 20 years. Will you be getting that sort of information back?
Yeah, I mean, in general, the useful life for process mechanical equipment like we would be getting is about 20 years.
Okay.
Electrical panels and control systems are considered to be less than that. I'd say, maybe 10 years. But the bulk of I'd say 90% or better of the work that'll be installed will have a 20-year useful life. With respect to capacity, we do anticipate that the new systems would carry us out until the master plan design life, which was 2045 at the earliest. So with potential for, that it would go beyond that, but the minimum capacity of the systems was set to be exactly equal or better than the 2045 flow and load projections.
Right. And I was just looking at based, what it talked about digester improvements in the Corolla report, and which were pretty basic, but they were 10 years out, I believe. And this may speed up the process of moving some of these projects forward or back.
Yeah, the digestion improvements was one of the phase 1 projects, which was the year 1 through 5. So it is anticipated still to be in that window of phase 1. This was an important step, or is an important step, because it solidifies what the design concepts are, so that our consultants can then develop what they estimate would be for final design activities. But yeah, it's scheduled to occur in the first set of projects for the master plan.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Jay. Any other questions or comments from board members? All right, seeing none, let's move to the administrative department report with Crystal.
Good morning, or I guess almost good afternoon. So for the finance department, we participated in the finance committee in July, and we are just knee deep in year end and audit and interim audit work for FY22. Next slide, Rochelle, please. So in the billing department, we had one commercial inspection, and then all of the listed below connection fees, 29 residential. And when I did the calculation and math on that, the average was over 3,000 square foot homes of those 29 residential connection fees. 16 new sewer service charge additions, and we finished submission of the FY22 delinquent tax roll and FY23 tax roll. Next slide. In the purchasing and admin department, Kaylee is continuing to work on a microfiche project for us. We have over 600 microfiche rolls, and she's done a very good job on that, and we're getting ready to convert the ones that we need. She's continued scanning of our easements. We had several boxes of easements that were the paper easements, and she completed some training for purchasing and Cassell. And then general administration, continued conversations with the financial advisors, investment bankers, and consultants for future needs. And then we're in the middle of the sewer service charge and connection rate fee study. We had a kickoff meeting with HDR for the study with the finance committee. I actually don't remember the date of that. And that is it for the finance and admin department. I did want to say that while I've only been here for a little over a year and I don't know the board of directors as well as everyone else, I did get an extra opportunity to work with Lane and very much appreciated his knowledge and feedback and support in the finance committee meetings that we've had. And then I also wanted to thank Rochelle for the new overhaul of the PowerPoint presentation. It looks really good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Crystal. Questions or comments from the board for Crystal? All right, seeing none, I'd like to open it up to public comment for any comments related to any of the department reports. Is there any public comment?
We have no public comment.
Thanks, Rochelle.
Mhm.
Next is the general manager's report. Richard.
Morning, everybody, again. Several items are repeats from the various department reports. Do want to highlight the effort that staff has been putting forth on the software and hardware upgrades. There's been a lot of work by a lot of people going into that to update the technology that the agency uses, and just want to acknowledge them for all that effort. It's long and ongoing and tedious, and they've made great headway. Vicki and I have been working on the employee handbook with the intent to present that to the board at the next board meeting. As Crystal mentioned, we did have the kickoff meeting with HDR on the connection and charge fee study. Again, the agency website is moving forward. Next slide, please. Update on the fire response, since that actually happened last month. As mentioned, AT&T has fully restored all of our services. We were contacted by the district attorney's office to seek restitution for any costs that we incurred. The costs that we will incur is to cut down all the burnt trees that were in the 12-acre burn area. We're moving forward with the company that did our mastication last year to make that happen. I have filled out the paperwork and sent that back to the district attorney's office for them to take to the court at the next court date. They're also reaching out to Truckee Fire for restitution as well. So I've been in touch with the fire chief over there and their process and their portion of it. Hearing the board's direction last month, I did reach out to the district attorney's office as well and filed an amended police report with Truckee PD. So they will be charging the suspect with trespassing on our premises. So more to come on that if we're contacted to provide any kind of testimony. Last thing I'd really like to highlight is the safety luncheon. Staff held luncheon to celebrate 3,696 work days without a lost time work injury. That's quite an amazing feat and deserves quite a recognition. That's a long time. So if you want to go to the next slide, we'll cover the photos from the fire response.
Hey, Richard, just
yes.
a comment, that is amazing to go over 10 years without a lost time injury. I've never heard of that, quite frankly, and I'm jealous that the agency has been able to accomplish that. So I'd suggest you guys do a safety luncheon every 100 days that accumulates, because that's something to be celebrated.
Agreed. It's pretty unheard of. And if you look at any of the statistics out there, we definitely don't fit the mold. So photos from the fire, the top left-hand photo is where the fire started. You can see some flames in the background there. That's out just beyond the famous climbing rock that we have a lot of visitors to. And drop over, you can see first responder staff that stayed in the facility started wetting down areas that are critical, just to be on the safe side if the fire had continued to move forward. There's a nice overhead. You can see the layer of fire retardant that they laid down with the aerial aircraft, kind of laying that barrier between the facility and where the fire started. As you see, the response included agencies all the way from Truckee Meadows. They were dispatched to our location to provide structure protection. There was an engine from there, as well as the city of Reno. So we interfaced with them, letting them know what hazards we had in the facility. Last photo is kind of cut off for me in the presentation, but it's just a shot of one of the planes coming in to drop that retardant. So it was really nice that Truckee Fire and all the other districts jumped on it quick, worked well with us, and got it knocked out in a hurry. So the restitution, as I mentioned, or the remediation work will include reseeding along the Legacy Trail where it spot fired right up next to it. We'll be removing all the dead trees and any trees that threaten the communication lines coming in to the facility. Any questions?
Dang, you guys are getting fancy. All right. Thank you, Richard. Any questions or comments from the board? Lane.
Yes, one of my final comments here is I with the ad hoc committee for general manager, I mean, having talked with staff and employees, I hope you don't rush into this. I think Richard has been doing a phenomenal job, and I hope you strongly consider him for that position. I think for reset for the TTSA, he's just done an outstanding job the last month and a half, and I would suggest that the board give him the opportunity in an interim period to prove himself before you go out.
Thanks, Lane. I believe the ad hoc committee will be meeting in September, but not until after our next board meeting.
Yeah, I just want to put in my 2 cents. I think it'd be for the health of the district. Richard's the right guy at the right time.
Great. Thanks, Lane. Is there any public comment on the general manager's report?
There is no public comment.
Okay. Seeing none, the last item on our agenda is an opportunity for Board of Directors comments. Thanks, Lane, for your comment on that. Do you, either you, Lane, have other comments, or do any of the other board members have any questions or comments for the good of the order?
Yeah, I got a quick comment. Lane, thanks for your service. I don't want to echo it too much at this meeting, but you've done an outstanding job and I'll miss you. The second thing is Rochelle, could you make sure and have a posting in my report to the Squaw Valley Board of our 10 years without a lost time accident, please?
Definitely.
Thank you. No further comment.
Thank you, Dale. Questions or comments from other board members? Blake?
Yeah, again, Lane, great working with you. Looking forward, I guess we'll have to decide what to do with regard to the second member on the finance committee. It sounds like your replacement over there has a good, strong finance background, so maybe a good place for him to jump in and get to know the agency. But I think that needs to maybe get on the agenda for September. I attended the CASA. CASA is the California Association of Sanitation Agencies. They had their annual conference last week at the resort at Squaw Creek, and had some associates that I know request a kind of last minute tour of TTSA. And I wanted to thank Mike Peak for accommodating that request and giving the folks from City of San Luis Obispo a tour around. I know they really appreciated that. And I appreciate your flexibility in showing off what we do here. They were very impressed. And I know we're a member of CASA as well. I believe we're a member of CASA as well, and good organization that looks after the interests of the sanitation industry, and something we should continue to participate in there. Make sure our voice is heard as folks down in Sacramento in particular, and even in DC, make decisions that could impact our industry, and making sure that our voice is heard.
Thanks, Blake. Questions or comments from other board members?
I would just like to say to thank Lane for helping me along starting out here. So that's pretty good. I don't think I'll make 30 years. So that's pretty impressive. Thank you.
It is, for sure. All right. With that, let's go ahead and adjourn the board meeting, and look forward to seeing most of you at our September board meeting. Thanks, Wayne.
Thank you.
Bye.